Hey everybody, and welcome back to a Better Computer. Today I'm going to do a slightly different video than normal. This is going to be kind of walking through some photos I took this morning to compare the iPhone 12 Pro's camera to a couple other cameras I have. I'm doing one shot compared to the Pixel 4, but that's not the real focus today. The real focus today is on the Sony RX100 Mark III. Now this is a 2014 camera, so it's 6 years old at this point. But I wanted to, it's what I have to shoot with, it's my real camera that I have. So I wanted to use that as a comparison point to kind of see how the iPhone 12 Pro does great and how it still has a lot of progress to go if it's going to be the full-on replacement for cameras. This may not be the most interesting comparison for some people because I don't have a $10,000 camera. I don't have one of these super fancy DSLRs or anything. This is a point and shoot, effectively. It's a nice point and shoot, but it's still a point and shoot. So here's a comparison of kind of how the iPhone does compared to that, and then you can kind of see kind of where I think Apple has some room to grow and where I think that they're actually already surpassing stuff like this. Even higher end cameras, they do better than those. So here's a quick picture of my desk. I've got these couple things full of little desk accessories. Got a Yoshi over here. And this is the photo taken on the Sony RX100, the Pixel 4, and the iPhone. And you can really see the difference here. And this is pretty consistent. In terms of aperture, the iPhone is at 1.6, the Sony is at 1.8, and then the Pixel, I actually should look that up. I'll put it on the screen right now, but it's similar to the iPhone. But you can really see a difference. I'm going to zoom in here on the Sony. So the Sony image is really soft, really, I think, beautiful. It looks really nice. You can see that the vials are in focus, and then the shallow depth of field, because I'm close to it and I'm using a wide open aperture, everything else is out of focus. So the wall that's only a couple inches behind is really out of focus. You can kind of see some texture on this front thing, and then all of my desk, which is dusty, and you would be able to see the dust, is really faded out already. Even the Yoshi over here on the left, his nose is pointing out further than those little vials, and so it's even a little out of focus. So you really get a shallow depth of field here. Obviously I can change the aperture to get less of that, but I'm trying to be as close to the 1.6 of the iPhone as possible. When we look at the Pixel next, you can really see the difference between how real cameras and phone cameras treat things. Phone cameras love to sharpen things, and you may like that, but you can see everything is much more in focus. The background is pretty well in focus. It's slightly blurred, and then the ground is, you can definitely see more of that dust that's there. Yoshi's in perfect focus and everything, and then these are just super crisp, so they look really nice. Again, very sharpened, very aggressively sharpened to look that way, but you may prefer that. And then there's the iPhone 12, and the iPhone 12 looks much more like the Pixel shot than the real camera shot. It's a warmer image than the other two, but it does have a little more of that depth of field, and you can see a little bit of the stuff kind of fading out here, but I think it looks really great. Yoshi's a little more in focus than it is in the Sony. So if you kind of zoom out and look at all of these together, you can really see the difference with the Sony and the Pixel having similar color temperatures. I'll also note none of these were edited. These are all straight out of the camera, but this is how they look. And then the iPhone is a little warmer. I think the iPhone does a really good job here maintaining detail without being too sharp. I think the Pixel is actually too sharp of an image. I personally prefer the really milky kind of quality of the Sony, but that's a preference thing. And then we can even zoom all the way in to kind of see some details of it. This is where you really see the difference, is you kind of get all these nice reflections and stuff that are all blurred because of the really shallow depth of field that I think look really nice, but you don't have as much detail up here compared to the other ones. Actually, the Pixel has the most detail in the cork, and then up here, the Sony's kind of blurred out a little bit of the texture on the paint, whereas the Pixel 4 has more, and the iPhone actually might have the most. But yeah, that's kind of a close-up view of those. But that's just one shot, so let's just take the Sony and the iPhone outside and see how they do. So here we go. Here is the iPhone on the left and the Sony on the right. And so this was a challenging shot. The sun is directly in the middle of the frame. It's going between some tree branches, and we've got this subject in the middle, in the front, that's being backlit pretty harshly. And so you look at these two and they look pretty similar. I think that I like the lens flare on this one, on the iPhone one. There's a nice little lens flare here that's kind of like shooting out over here. That's really nice. The Sony doesn't get that. I just get a ball of sunlight right there and no lens flare, which obviously if you have a different lens you can make that happen, but just out of the box I think that one looks a little nicer. One thing I will say is that the detail is really different in these two. You can really tell the difference. So if we kind of look all the way over here in the distance, you kind of go up here next to the top of the flagpole, you can kind of see that, and then these are all pretty jaggy here, and then like these little wisps of the tree branches here you can't really see. They're really just kind of approximated. It's fine, like you look at it at normal size and it's fine, but if we compare it to the Sony and kind of zoom in, you can see that's much better around the circle, and then these are much more defined, so there's more detail being brought in. There's a little noise. I could get rid of that noise in Lightroom if I wanted to, but yeah, there's a little more detail in the Sony shot. This next image really shows off the detail difference as well. So again, iPhone on the left, Sony on the right, and so this is taken from the same spot. I'm using the 50mm lens on each camera, and so the real test here is which one can see the license plate better, right? So we zoom in on the iPhone and you can kind of make it out. It's probably, you know, something. If we shoot over here to the Sony and zoom in, I mean, yeah, you can totally see it. I'm blurring out a little bit of it so I don't totally just let these guys let you know who these people are, but like even stuff back here, like you can almost read that sign on the Sony. Over here it's harder to read, so there's just more detail in the Sony, and that actually makes sense. The iPhone is spitting out 12 megapixel images, the Sony's doing 20 megapixel. I'm resizing the image to make it easier to see side by side, but yeah, the Sony is definitely capturing more information. So while 12 megapixels is a great compromise right now on smartphones, there's definitely room to move up so we can capture more detail. And then this final comparison is a selfie comparison. So this is using the wide lens on the iPhone, and then this is just the kind of all the way out on the Sony. And so you put these side by side, and again, I think that they both look really good, but you can tell the difference in depth of field. So the iPhone has the background definitely blurred. There's a natural blur there. I'll show you a selfie mode one in a second, but there's a definite blur on the background. My face is totally in focus. We can zoom in and you can see kind of what's going on there. You can really zoom in, and it's not super crisp around my facial hair, but it's very good. It looks really nice, well balanced. Again, this hasn't been edited. There's the sun coming in from over here that's bouncing off my forehead, so that's blown out a little bit, but not a big deal. On the Sony one, it's very similar, but the background is definitely more blurred out. You can see over here on the iPhone, you can still almost make out stop, whereas over here it's completely blurred out. And if you zoom in on my facial hair, again, we're seeing the benefit of the 20 megapixels, the larger sensor. The stubble is more clearly there. And then that spot up here where it was totally blown out on the iPhone, yeah, it's blown out here too. So if I went into Lightroom, which I actually have before this, to try to see if it was possible to get rid of this, no, that's just totally lost data. So that's a little unfortunate, but yeah, I think that of these two, I really like the look of the Sony. The iPhone one looks great, it looks spectacular. The colors are great. Again, this is totally unedited and the colors look really good. The sharpness is good, it captured the right focus. I just kind of personally prefer the slightly more bokeh out background. So how about portrait mode? Well, here's portrait mode, and you can kind of see how portrait mode isn't quite the same. So you can kind of see up here, the really nice thing about a natural bokeh is that every hair obviously is being captured correctly. It's actually slightly blurred because, again, with 1.8 on the aperture on the Sony with that size sensor, it's actually a very shallow depth of field, but you can see all my hair there, whereas on the iPhone, you can really see, when you see them like side by side, how cut out that is and how fake that looks. So Definitely not as good there. It does do a pretty good job with edge detection. These sharp edges, it does a really good job keeping my code in focus. Back here, I can't actually tell if this is an error or if this is actually it noticing that that part of the code is further back and purposely blurring it a little bit. Hard to say, but overall, I think the iPhone one looks decent. And if you look at it on a phone size screen, it's probably pretty good, but obviously the real one is better. But this isn't to say that the iPhone is bad or terrible in any way. It's obviously a really great camera, and what it does better than my Sony, and what I think it does better than pretty much all other real cameras, full-on cameras, dedicated cameras I should say, is it does a fantastic job of not taking bad photos. So all of these photos I showed today were staged photos, were still photos where I was able to set up and take them nicely, and what the iPhone does great is that you can just hit the camera button, hit the shutter, and then it's immediately taking a perfect picture. It's getting the focus right, it's getting the shutter speed right, it's just doing everything super, super fast. I really notice this when I'm taking pictures of my dog. So my dog is moving around, he's obviously not posing for the camera very well, and so I'm able to get better shots of him on average with my iPhone than I am with my full-on camera with my Sony, partially because I don't have to worry about the settings. I just hit the button, I point it at him, hit the button, and take it. And that's gonna get a good result. Stuff like this where he's like in the middle of a shake, like it cranks up the shutter speed, I don't have to think about it. And make sure to accommodate that with, capturing enough light with the aperture and everything. So like it's doing a lot of smart stuff to get high quality images. And that's, I think, the big benefit that the iPhone has now is that you don't have to think about it. Even in the harshest conditions, it's going to get a good photo. Whereas with a full-on camera, you're definitely going to get bad shots. You're going to get shots with motion blur that you don't want. You're just going to get shots that are out of focus. You're going to get things that aren't perfect. And so I think that the iPhone on average gets better images in harsh conditions. That's not even mentioning things like night mode, where I can get shots at night, where I just hold it handheld for a couple seconds and it gets a better photo than I could even on a tripod oftentimes with a real camera. It's not taking into account HDR, where it's snapping a bunch of photos and combining them to make sure that I get fewer blown out spots, where I can get more dynamic range in my photos. It's not talking about deep fusion, where it's going in and pixel by pixel, adding detail, capturing it that it thinks should have been there in the shots. So there's a lot that the iPhone does fantastically and does better than the more traditional camera. But there's still some room for it to grow. So I think that's really exciting to see where they go in the future, because there is room. It's not like, what could they possibly do to make the iPhone better? Hopefully I've shown you some things today that make you go, yeah, there's some room for them to make things better down the line, and I hope that they do. So thank you so much for watching this non-traditional episode of A Better Computer, and I will see you here next time.